My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough.
This is the Patriot's Prayer Podcast. It's a tremendous show, one of the greatest shows in the history of the world.
This is Bryson Gray, and you are watching the Patriot's Prayer.
PPN, you're doing the right thing.
On the Patriot's Prayer Network. Thank you all.
PPN on your bumper.
I'm Tom McDonald. This is the Patriot Prayers Network. Check it out. Lots of good TV. Lots of cool people. Tune in. Keep it locked.
I'm the white boy with the middle fingers in the air, dog. We don't give a what. 100 white boys gonna hold me down anywhere, dog. We think that you suck. My Patriots the craziest. They ain't afraid of breaking fists on faces. If you really wanna taste of this, no safety tip. The same mistake and spray the clip. I pray you miss, cause if you don't, they gon' go wacko. Automatic gun smoke like tobacco. Never hit a lady, but it's pretty hard to tell if you're a girl or a they, them. There's these, that, those. I ain't never gonna take a knee for the anthem. Smack them. I don't give a damn, can't stand them. Gang full of randoms. Fan with a handgun. Run up in your mansion, leave it all abandoned. I was raised to be brave to the grave. United States, we love the country that they've been corrupting. Go woke and go broker if you ain't obeyed. My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags. And every time we pull up, all you...
Patriot's Prayer Network special edition with our guests, both going to be my co-host Maurice, aka the Native Patriot, and we have a special guest with us today, Matt Schlapp. But before we get into that, folks, I want you to know there are moments in history when the noise stops, when the bombs fall silent, when skies clear, and humanity gets one small breath to remember that we never were created for war, that we're standing in one of those moments, and the world is calling it the deal for everlasting peace. And for the first time in a long time, the word peace doesn't sound naive. It sounds necessary. Now, I'm not here to take sides. I'm not here to wave a flag for one nation or another. I'm here to say what every mother who's buried a child, everyone already knows: peace is priceless. And when the guns go quiet, even for a season, we should stop and breathe and thank God that another life gets a chance. But let's be honest. We've heard the word peace before. Ink on paper doesn't always mean the battle in the heart is over. Real peace isn't born in a conference room. It's born when hearts turn from hatred to humility, when truth takes the place of vengeance, when men remember that they themselves are not gods. So the deal for everlasting peace, just maybe this time we get a preview of what true peace looks like. God's hand steadies a trembling world. And whether or not this deal was driven by diplomacy or divine timing, one thing is certain: the Bible told us days like this would come. The prophets said there will be cries of peace and safety, even as the world is prepared for something far greater, the return of the King of Peace himself. So celebrate the calm. Remember to pray, because, guys, this is a time like no other in history. And with that, let's go ahead and bring on my guys here, both the chairman of CPAC himself and my co-host, Maurice, a.k.a. the Native Patriot. Here you go, guys. Guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time, Matt, for coming on, and welcome, Maurice.
Great to be with you. Yeah, I actually really enjoy the fact that I get to do this again, because I interviewed you, Matt, at CPAC, but it's good to have you back again, and especially in this time that we're currently experiencing. And I'm hoping that a lot of good comes from it, but it'll be really interesting. I think we're going to have an interesting conversation tonight, not only about the peace deal in the Middle East, but, you know, for CPAC itself moving forward, and how we kind of navigate moving forward with the rhetoric that's been happening, and along with the Charlie Kirk assassination, you know, him receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom today. was very, very cool on his birthday, nonetheless. So, but yeah, I think we're going to have a great conversation. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you guys again. And I remember that interview. You had interesting headgear on, though. So,
He's got it behind him, don't you?
Decorated.
Oh, yeah. I still got it right there.
All right, good.
We were trying to get Javier Milei to wear it. So he was walking past the booth, and Maurice got over and took a picture with him as he was walking by. And I said, how great would it have been if you would have put the headdress on Javier Milei? That would have been amazing. That would have been a picture.
He's too proud of his hair.
You would have messed his hair up for sure. For sure. Well, Matt, first off, this is a time like no other, as I said in the intro. These are prophetic times. And this deal for everlasting peace, I've prophetic whispers about it, and there's just an exuberance. And then obviously you have the opposing side, those who are the naysayers and that sort of thing. When you look at this from your perspective, and you're a lot closer to a lot of these things than obviously Maurice and I, you've probably had a lot of private conversations about this and read the finer details of this. What is your outlook on this, and how do you see this as being the deal for everlasting peace? Do you think this one will last?
I don't like the term peace in the Middle East. I think that's, we've all read the Bible. There's not going to be a lot of peace in this area. This is where it all goes down. And, but there could be some normal processes, some return to everyday commerce, security. These are the kind of terms I think of when I think of the Middle East. And, I think one of the best things about what President Trump was able to negotiate, despite the fact that Biden and his people are trying to take credit for this. These people we knew they were liars, but my gosh, if they were delusional liars. One of the best things about this, I think there's a realization that we always used to talk about a two-state solution since Bill Clinton time as president. And, it sounded logical. It's like, okay, if you want a state, there's a Palestinian state, and there's going to be a Jewish state in Israel. And then there'll be all these Arab countries around it. And people thought, well, they were okay with that idea. And then it's been made painfully aware that a Palestinian state would be run by Hamas, like Iran is being run by these terrible mullahs, and that will lead to more terrorism, and that will lead to America having to actually intervene in the region even more. And so part of this peace negotiation is also, I think, the political reality that a two-state solution is dead unless it can be demonstrated in the future that terrorists won't run the show.
Without a two-state solution in that area, how do they govern themselves, and what is the governing body? I've read some different things. Is it the Palestinian Authority? Is it a Palestinian committee, or what does that look like?
Well, look, I don't know what's going to be the result of this deal. There's, as the president said, this is step one. I think he was still waiting on the remains of hostages, which the last time I tuned in hadn't happened yet, but maybe it's happened in the intervening period of time. But there's a lot of steps to go through here. And there's a lot of Arab countries in the neighborhood, and most of these people, derive from those countries. And that's part of the question of the people who are living in Gaza. Should they be sent to other Arab countries? And the irony is these Arab countries don't want them, because the fact is really no countries want Hamas inside their border. You have this larger question of what happens with the West Bank and everything else. I'm not so sure I have what the answer is as to what's going to happen. I don't know if I can predict that, but I can tell you this. I think there's a realization that this two-state solution can't happen. Now, why? I think it could happen if both of those states could live up to an agreement that allowed for both states to exist, including the state of Israel. But when you have Hamas, which is committed to wiping Israel off the map, and its main allies, Qatar, Iran, and these other entities, have the same policy, we're just asking for war. And I think the one thing that certainly MAGA has said, but I really think America generally, is we don't want American boys and girls, our military, on the ground in the Middle East. It's, that would be a disaster for us. And so we have to take precautions that doesn't happen. And I think President Trump's really brilliance when it comes to this agreement, I think protects that.
That may be the most important point that you've brought up in relaying that there's been a significant mandate by the people, by the MAGA movement in general, that we don't want to have war in Iran. We don't want to continue to intervene in the Middle East in the way that we have been for the last 20, 30 years, and then even more so before that. I mean, this has been something that has been pushed for quite some time, and it seems as of now that it's more than likely going to happen, or at least stay that way with this deal being made. I'm not sure of all the particulars of the deal that needs to, before it goes into place. But do you see any kind of fallout situation that could take place that would kind of derail this whole thing, or does this seem pretty solid?
Oh yeah, boy, there's nothing like doing politics in the Mideast or negotiating in the Mideast. Anything can happen to intervene to stop this. That's why it's such a miracle that it happened.
Yeah.
Because, after 2 years of these people being held hostage, the fact that those that are still living were the remaining hostages were let free, and hopefully these remains of the deceased hostages are allowed to be given to their families as well. I mean, this is a miraculous thing, and peace through strength is being thrown out there. This is the Reagan doctrine, of which we crippled the Soviet Union. The mistake is people think that was just military strength. That's not what it was. It was cultural strength, military strength, economic strength. It was all of the aspects of a strong America that crippled the Soviet Union. But Reagan and Trump were in similar situations. Reagan inherited a situation where Jimmy Carter had made us look so weak, and the Soviet Union was like, wow, America is not ever going to be strong again, and we can dominate. And the problem for Trump is he inherited both these wars, and this one was particularly problematic because why would Hamas ever give up their hostages? Why would Hamas ever give up their leverage? And I think it was made clear to them and I think the strike in Iran helped with this, that the president was ready to take serious steps if they weren't going to, comply with this idea that you shouldn't be taking hostages as a form of diplomacy, which is essentially what they were doing. That's the act of a true terrorist, which is what they are. And so I think Trump has been able to reverse the Biden slide in a very quick. It's been almost a year, but it's been a very, very quick to be able to do this, and it's really hard. Once a war starts, stopping it, oh my gosh, so hard. And Ukraine is awfully tough too, but I'm hopeful the president will be able to succeed there as well.
Yeah, that's one where that's one that had everyone divided. We all obviously we all remember the 88 agreement, and the wall came down, and we agreed that NATO wouldn't move any closer. And now we have NATO countries bordering Russia on every side. You've got a lot that the details in why that war's happened are much more gray than they are white and black, and there's a lot to be worked out there. But Putin is is maniacal or sociopathic, as some may say he is. He's also a very smart man, and he plays chess as well as anyone else. And but Zelensky, I would ask you this: do you think that Americans are just tired of sending money after good after bad money over and over again for this many years to Ukraine without a solution, without some type of finality? Do you see any horizon, any sun on the horizon as far as ending that conflict? What can we do? What would your advice to Donald Trump be?
Well, I'm not sure anyone should take my advice, because you had asked me, and I was asked publicly right after the election. I would have predicted the Ukraine conflict would have been resolved quicker, and the Middle East conflict would be more protracted. Now, as you've already asked me, and I've already given you an answer, I think, unfortunately, the Middle East is complicated, and things could still intervene. The thing could get derailed. We might have to be right back at negotiations, which I think, that's one of the things the Trump team is going to have to stay on top of. But look, I find intervening in Ukraine very problematic. I probably come from a background where I was more comfortable with using the U.S. military to intervene, but I'm also a veteran of those Bush conflicts, and it's really chastised me and chastened me to this idea that America's military, we just got to be very humble and careful of how we use it. And we have to be cognizant of the ramifications for American families for generations to come when people pay the ultimate price. And there's also massive expense involved in deploying. And, the saddest thing about Afghanistan is we spent all that time and treasure in people's lives, and then look at how we exited. And it makes a lot of people cynical.
Conditional withdrawal should have been the way we did that. I mean, if you had listened to Biden years prior when he was talking about how to withdraw out of Iraq, he actually outlined a pretty good plan for how to pull out of Iraq. You pull the people out before you pull the military out. You leave no weapons behind, or else they'll be using them on your grandkids. He used to say a lot of things for, that you could agree with in the early 90s. And I don't know what happened to him between then and now. I have no idea. Obviously, we know he was not altogether there as president. There's a lot of controversy around the auto pin, and now people are finally coming forward to say how bad his mental decline was. And I think it's one of the worst conspiracies in U.S. history to say that we had a president with mental decline to that degree that doesn't remember what bills were signed and didn't sign. What was it, 97%? Of the things that crossed his desk. Who controlled the auto pin? Are the pardons actually legal? These are things that I think the Supreme Court are going to tackle, and
that's right.
The outcome is going to be pretty earth shattering, because it's very. I mean, the people around him, the Democrats around him, his wife, Kamala Harris herself, they're all accessories in this particular crime that was committed against the American people. When it comes to this, this whole administration,
as I said on the Ukraine piece, I'm very skeptical that that America should get dragged too deeply into this conflict.
Yeah.
That being said, I also know that the president believes very strongly that Putin needs to behave, and he feels like this is the right next step to make him behave. So let's hope that these aggressive steps will result in Putin making that. Getting that understanding. As far as Joe Biden is concerned, he was never considered the sharpest knife in the Senate drawer.
That's right.
But you're right. He at least seemed to not be crazy, seemed to have some logic to how he'd approach things, whether, there was a whole bunch of topics when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee that, he didn't have a modern socialist kind of veneer to it. And somewhere along the line, he shed that, probably for political expediency, because he was a white guy trying to win the nomination in a party that really doesn't want white men to do anything. And so in order to get that nomination, he went way left and way woke and put a young, radicalized staff in charge of everything. And, it was Katie bar the door. And America will really never be the same. The 1-2 punch of Obama and then Biden. Obama, a true radical who, said his wife said she wasn't really proud of being an American until Obama won the presidency. I really think
correct.
That's actually what they think. And I'm watching Obama in these interviews he's given. He's a very odd person, and he did a lot of damage to the country. I don't think he believes in the fundamental values of the country. And then Joe Biden, because he wanted to be the president so bad, he turned the office of the presidency over just to this very radicalized cadre of advisors, and they did everything that the progressives ever could have wanted. And at the end, the American people were weak, hurting, unemployed, scared, 2 wars in 2 continents, and this general projection that somehow, normalizing multiple votes in an election, and the idea that America couldn't lead anymore, and the adoption of DEI, which is antithetical to everything about America.
And the Civil Rights Act itself. was
Yeah,
antithetical too. It was a self-defeating argument. I really don't understand how anyone can defend it. And it's always content of character, not the color of the skin, where this argument turns that on its head. I really don't understand how the progressive wing of the Democrat Party, which is the whole thing is the progressive wing now. Anyone that is like a Democrat, a 90s Democrat, doesn't even fit into that crowd anymore.
Well, you probably voted for Trump.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Trump would have been a 90s Democrat in a lot of ways. But that's the world we're living in now, where they double down on progressive values to their own detriment. I mean, Kamala recently said she didn't think the United States was ready for a gay vice president, so she chose Tim Walz.
I know. It's so bizarre. And listen to her speeches. I mean, just excoriating any conservative Trump supporter, Republican, because we supposedly are homophobes, but yet she admits in her book to being a homophobe. It's kind of bizarre. They don't really have truth, so they talk in these logical circles, and it's really hard for those of us on the other side to understand what the hell, how their brain processes things.
Well, I'll tell you what, Matt, you brought up a good point in maybe a good question in asking that, can America actually be a leader in the world? And I think that absolute power, or I guess the old saying goes to absolute power corrupts absolutely. And America's been a superpower for a very long time. And I think that it's been used in a corrupt way, or at least America as the superpower has become corrupted in a certain way. And it seems like now with these deals being made and Trump back in office, it almost feels like we're kind of shifting back to becoming a moral leader of the world, as opposed to trying to intervene in every single conflict in order to, or throw money at one side or even both sides in a lot of cases, in order to kind of shift it in the way. And like, I think what the American people want to see is America return to being that leader, to being that moral leader that can actually lead by example, as opposed to funding both sides of the war. I mean, do you see us kind of shifting back that way as well?
I think it's well said. I've said this several times over the course of the last 24 hours, but the world wants America to find her moral clarity and her moral voice. It doesn't mean that America gets to run the show. It doesn't mean that Donald Trump should be the world's dictator. But the fact that all these leaders flocked to stand behind Donald Trump at the podium on the announcement of this deal shows that actually, and this is from all different ideological perspectives, they all know that a strong America, properly governed, can bring peace and prosperity to the globe. And, this is the president that's putting tariffs on half these countries, yet they're all standing behind him because they actually want Trump to be strong. And they know that when he's strong, terrorists are scared. Putin won't invade any more countries. The Chinese realize they have to be careful with mainlining their radical desires to control the whole world. Everybody is rooting for Trump to succeed, even those who are politically on the left, because of security reasons and economic reasons. And it's amazing to watch.
Do you think they're doing that quietly? Because out loud, I mean, I'll get to that, but let me ask you a question about the right. So at the end of this election term, Trump is running, and we have Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, and many others coming out to support Kamala. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? Are the globalists taking their masks off? I mean, what do you make of that? I wanted to ask you this before.
I worked for President Bush and Vice President Cheney, and Liz Cheney was a good friend of ours. And I know a lot of these people who became never Trumpers. And, it's been a painful decade for my wife and I. We have lost, hundreds of very close friends and associates. We have been attacked, been called the worst names for simply believing that Donald Trump was a legitimate choice in 2016, and that he did a good job in his first term and deserved to be reelected, and that there was a lot of election malfeasance. And, there's no way Joe Biden got 81 million votes. And, and it was wrong to say in America that the only way America could cure its racial past was to adopt BLM, DEI policies. And so we stood up to these things, and we lost our friends, we lost our way of life, we lost the people we thought were important, and we lost our business, we lost everything. And it's the greatest thing in the whole world. It's great to shed yourself of friends who were a bunch of jerks and who didn't really like you and didn't love the country. And, you know, I would put President Bush and Vice President Cheney in a different category. I still have a lot of respect for them. And they were my former bosses, and they treated me with dignity when I worked for them, and they treated my wife with dignity. And I'm a little brokenhearted because I can't understand why anybody who had the views that they espoused would do anything to support Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. So, like, I think for too many of these Republicans, their ego got in the way of doing the morally correct thing. And the irony is that they were accusing me of being immoral and just doing what was in my self-interest. And really, it was the opposite. My self-interest would have been to go along with all of them. And I would still be on CNN. I would still be on MSNBC. I would have gotten another book deal, you know, but instead we chose a lonelier course. And I had a buddy of mine call me the other day, and he was like, isn't it great that you don't have to work for all those jerks who fired you, stopped inviting you to their cocktail parties? And, you know, it's really true. We are unburdened. And, you know, every once in a while it makes me sad that Washington has become so putrid. But I'm proud of the fact that when Donald Trump ran in 2016, we said it was a legitimate thing for a conservative to support him. And then we fought like hell to get him into the White House. And then we fought like hell to get him reelected. And then that weird election occurred. And then we never took a step away from him. And I encouraged him to run again. I didn't think he should in some ways because I really care for him as a human being. I thought it was crazy what they were doing to him. But I soon realized that if he didn't run for president again, they were going to really put him in prison. And he had to run to make it stop. And it was also just God's calling on his life to do it. It was so obvious. And so we never took a step away from him. I'm proud of that. And I think CPAC played a constructive role in getting him into that White House and getting him back in that White House. Might be one of the greatest things I'll ever do in my life.
Yeah. And thank you for being so bold and doing exactly what you did. And yes, it's very easy to go along, get along, but the truth will shed you friends really quick.
It will. Yeah. I didn't know that. I really thought that I was so charming that people actually really liked me. And what I didn't realize is that they could have cared less about me. They were using me to gain their own power and to get me to help them, you know, make more money and get more power. And, you know, I was being used as a vehicle. And what God has taught us all with how he created is that that's not an appropriate way to use other human beings. We're supposed to try to collaborate with other human beings and help them find joy and help them figure out what God's path is for them. And using each other for short-term gain is contrary to why we're on the earth. And the extent to which a lot of my Republican friends just kind of play that parlor game, and I was guilty of that too. It's good that I grew up and stopped it.
You know, that's encouraging. Everything you just said about all of that is absolutely encouraging to hear that people are, you know, that's your outlook, because me and Maurice are pretty much, we are exactly where you're at on that. And a lot of people go along to get along because it is an easier course. You will have more success. You will make more money. You will be liked at all the parties. All of those things. But unfortunately, the truth is a lonely road.
Yeah,
Christ said it too. Jesus was upfront about that as well, a long time ago.
Erica Kirk, I never want to interrupt somebody when they start bringing up
No, you're good.
But Erica Kirk brought up today in one of the snippets I saw that her husband didn't have fear, and that he was calm and took great solace in the fact that he was simply doing the right thing. Now, I hope that's an accurate description of him. And I would just say this: that's a great gift from God if you have that gift of having serenity over the fact that you're doing the right things. My understanding of the great Christians and the great saints, and my wife and I spend a fair amount of time studying their lives because we'd like to be like them, and we're so far away from being like them, is that a lot of very holy people have a lot of struggle and they have a lot of suffering. So if you're somebody that is a little bit down about the way things are turning out in our country and in society and around the globe, and the struggles families and people are going through. The only thing I would say is that there's nothing wrong with you if you don't feel like it's all just a joyful, easy ride. If you're actually experiencing a lot of negative feelings and a lot of anxiety and concern about what the future holds, I would actually say that is not inconsistent with being someone who has strong faith. And sometimes that's part of how your faith gets better, right? Which is it's just like if you want to run a marathon, you got to have some very painful training and runs in order to be able to get there. I used to play a lot of tennis, and in order to be a really good tennis player, they used to say you had to get tournament tough, which means you had to do a lot of physical conditioning, and you had to lose a lot, and you had to learn from those losses. And there is redemption and improvement if you keep all this in the proper perspective. And so when I look at all the suffering that people have gone through in this country and America has gone through, I don't look at it as all a waste of time and energy and money. I view it as maybe we have to go through these dark times so that we can step up again and do what's right, and take those next bold steps. Just take that next step, and I'm very hopeful we're on the path to do that.
I think
refining. It's a refining.
Refining. It's a great word. It's exactly what it is.
It's a refining. Jesus promised this one thing: tribulation.
Yes.
And that's what I think that the United States has to remember, and American Christianity has to really take to heart, is that there is a gospel that all too pervasive tells people that if you actually walk that road, that your life will get easier. God will pay your bills. You'll never be sick. Life will be just great. And then when tribulation comes, they fall off.
That's right.
What he does is it gives us the ability to be able to handle those hard times. And America's had a lot of hard times throughout our history, and our strength in God, I think, has been what carries us forward.
Maurice, I think Donald Trump is an amazing man of history. I'm Catholic. You guys might be not Catholic, but strong Christians. I don't know what you are. But but one thing I encourage my evangelical brothers and sisters to do is, if you love the stories of a great man like Donald Trump, we need to look at the other great men through centuries of Christianity. There's people who just had amazing lives, and it's inspirational. It's part of recapturing history and statues and paintings and all the stuff that's getting canceled all over the place. You can't find a man or woman who made a massive impact on history who wasn't tortured, who wasn't persecuted. I have an icon sitting over here of Saint Athanasius, who I think was Egyptian, and he was the first Christian prelate who said that Jesus was God, and they whipped him and they threw him in prison and they ostracized him. Like, this man is crazy and we're going to excommunicate him. By the end of his life, it was considered Christian doctrine that Jesus was fully God. It took all that, for whatever reason, for people to discover truth, and that is just the way it is. There's no person who's made a big impact on history, and by the way, you only make a really good positive impact on history if you're doing what God is calling you to do, who didn't go through the tribulations as you described. And so embrace it. You don't have to like it, but embrace it, and know that at the end of the day, you're going to be a faster runner, you're going to be a better tennis player, you're going to be a better mom, a better dad, whatever that thing is that God wants for you in your life. You'll be better at it because you'll be more connected to him. And by the way, if suffering wasn't a part of being a human being, why did the Father ask his Son to suffer the pain, to bleed, to sweat blood, to die in the most humiliating way, if there wasn't something further redemptive about the fact that it was so humiliating? And so that to me is a great solace.
Yes.
Do you kind of see this, I guess, maybe living these ideals out or embodying what you preach, as a chairman of CPAC and moving forward? Like, what are your plans moving forward with CPAC and how to kind of spread this ideal out? I know that, Turning Point is a completely different entity, but we had gone to both just this last year.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed both of those events, and CPAC in particular. You were able to bring a lot of a lot of conservatives together. So is there anything that you plan on doing moving forward to kind of spread these ideals out and I guess maybe just help people?
I don't know. Who was the great smart person who said, "I plan and God laughs"? So I have all kinds of ideas, and it seems like oftentimes my ideas are not exactly what God wants. I would say this when it comes to Turning Point. Charlie started on our stage. I remember he was a really young kid.
Is that a fact?
Yep. And he came to CPAC. He had about 25 kids in red T-shirts. He had this group, and I believe it was called Turning Point from the beginning. And he asked me, he was like, "Can we bring the kids up on your stage? And could you help kind of like get us attention?" And I was like, "Sure, that'd be a lot of fun." And he actually helped close CPAC that year up on the stage with all of his kids. And I infuriated the other groups that saw themselves as like the college kid group, right? Like, so they were all mad at me. They're like, "Why'd you give this young
favoritism,
the stage? You could have given us the stage." And I said, "Well, I didn't even think about it. He was so impressive that I thought it was the right thing to do." But, his group got big, and then they started having big conventions too. And, I remember one time, I think I was invited one time to speak at one of their conventions, and the young person, I almost said kid because I'm getting so old, but the young person said, "Turning Point's getting bigger than CPAC." And I remember looking at them, I said, "Well, I could be threatened by that." But I looked at him, I said, "Can you imagine if CPAC got big and Turning Point got big and Heritage Foundation got big and all the groups got big, we'd actually save the country."
Yeah.
So, I know that seems like we're competing with each other, but if CPAC was the only big group and there was no other big groups, that probably mean we were going to fail on our ultimate goal. So, you want to have everybody succeed. You want to have all the donors feed all of them. And in the end, it's kind of like, someone's the Dodgers and someone's the Yankees and someone's the Mets. And maybe someone has a good decade and raises more money and does more good things. And like I said, I'm very proud of the fact that we've built a great community around CPAC that has made I think a dramatic impact on Donald Trump's rise to power in America. We didn't just sit back and rest on our laurels, as I think a lot of conservative groups did after Reagan won in 1980. They all took a rest, or at least a lot of them did. And instead, we decided to double down. And then we took this fight overseas. We're now in 12 countries. We're on 5 continents. I talk as much during the day with people from overseas who are in similar battles as to people around the country here. And it's about 5 or 6 leaders around the world that are going to save this globe. And Javier Milei is one of them, and Viktor Orban is one of them, and Georgia Maloney is one of them. And we have this great new president, Nawrocki, in Poland. So, it's not that many leaders who are kind of in the mold of what Donald Trump is trying to do. And then there's about 5 or 6 other countries where there's a center-right party that's realizing they better get a little more MAGA, else they're going to get kicked out of power. And then you have tumult in Germany and the UK, where I think Nigel Farage will be the next prime minister in France. So, and then I haven't even gone into Asia and South America, where we spend a lot of time. I'm letting you guys know that, there's not just hope here in America. There's hope in all of these continents around the world. We almost lost it all. Freedom, the torch of freedom almost blew out. But
yes, it did.
Thank God Donald Trump kept it lit, and I think it's spreading.
It definitely is a scary prospect, hearing a lot of things that was said on the left as that election was coming to a close, as far as what they said they wanted to do. Kamala was talking about coming into people's homes to inspect their guns and policing the internet and daring, Elon Musk, if he didn't, that they would do it, threatening free speech. The prospect of them being in power was truly scary. I think that the conversation we're having right now may have been illegal under the Kamala Harris regime. Yeah. And that to some people may seem conspiratorial to think, but it's not. Listen to what they were saying. They doubled down on their progressiveness. And when you think they just can't go any further or do something that's more antithetical to American values, Christian values, or just morality in general, they do. Morality is relative to them, and there are no absolute truths. The only thing that they will stand for is that they don't stand for anything. That's it. They don't have a platform.
like I said, it's very hard if you don't believe in absolute truth and everything's relative and there's no gender and everything can be manipulated and changed. You do get to you get to silliness when you hear them try to use logic in the political context, and you know they suffer from not understanding that up is up and down is down and left is left. 1 + 1 = 2, and they suffer from the fact that they don't believe in those terms. They believe that things are relative, and in the end, they don't believe necessarily that God created us for a purpose, and they don't believe that God created truth. And that's why we run around talking about things like net zero and a Green New Deal and trans rights, and it goes and it's why they believe that you can have confiscatory tax policy. It goes into all the economic questions, which are just questions of math. They've tried to take math and science. They're the ones who don't believe in either math or science.
They were literally coming out and saying, it was a couple of years ago, but there was almost a popular movement on the left where they were saying that 2 + 2 does actually equal 5 sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean, you remember that?
It depended on your race. We learned at the African American Museum that it was racially insensitive and racist for us to expect people to be on time or to be able to do addition.
Oh yeah, these were white
Anglo qualities, and
yeah,
you read this stuff and you're like, we're doomed, because people creating this museum curriculum are the people that like teach our kids. Right.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple of things that really stuck out to me. Drew Barrymore's a morning show, or just a talk show in general, and she was doing this thing where she was singing in the rain. And what is the MSNBC host that got fired? The Joy.
Oh,
Joy Reid.
Joy Reid. Yeah, Joy Reid literally made a statement that singing in the rain is a white supremacist thing, and the other one was good morning. So they literally put it all over the internet that don't say good morning because the word morning derives from some racist epithet. It's amazing. They will turn absolutely anything into a racial statement. And that's meanwhile, right, the people in the middle, the people like us, the people with a moral compass, we don't care about race. And the more that they play this game to put people into one or two boxes, either with or against, people don't realize there's a third choice. And that third choice is truth. And our brothers and sisters don't necessarily, have a political agenda or a party or anything. It's literally people who believe, feel, and think like us and want their children to grow up in a safe world and go to a school where they're not indoctrinated and be safe playing out front. And these are the way we grew up, and we're trying to make it that way again. And unfortunately, we're seeing Donald Trump having to force the help on states that they should be requesting. Cities should be requesting this help, and they're acting like there's no problem when there's a humongous problem.
Huge problem.
And I don't quite understand the mayor of Chicago and his stance. And I thought Lori Lightfoot couldn't be one-upped, but this guy absolutely outdoes her by a mile. How do you feel about the
Well, it gets back to this question of racializing everything and not being able to use logic. I mean, the reason why you need cops in big cities, because if you don't have them, black kids are going to get murdered. And that's what they're allowing to happen. And what they're saying is that it's the cops who are the bad guys and not the criminals. And then you have all these illegals who are coming in from gangs and cartels, and the racial component of immigration is not the problem. The problem is that you're letting people make a choice as to whether or not they can come into their country on what they want to do instead of what our country needs. And of course the bad people and the lazy people will run into our country because they're going to try to benefit from all of our programs and benefit from our generosity. And of course, if you're a criminal, you're running to Chicago because they've normalized crime. And so is New York, and so is LA, and so is Washington, D.C. So, it's illogical and it's dangerous. And that's the one thing, I guess, my final takeaway in all this is the woke socialism that almost grabbed a hold of America is really dangerous for our kids. It pollutes their minds with propaganda about science and math, and gender and sex and love and romance and, the questions, these basic moral questions of what creates human joy. And it's dangerous because it emboldens China and all the bad people around the world. Joe Biden, 2 wars and 2 continents because he refused to lead and be strong. And it's not just you have higher taxes and more abortions when they run everything. You literally risk the destruction of the whole enterprise because, it's at risk and our security is at risk. So I think the American people, by and large, have figured this out, which is the old Democratic Party, a little less constitution, fewer guns, higher taxes. They didn't like that, but that wasn't radical. This radicalized Democratic Party is really scary.
Well, and you can see it escalating and continuing to escalate. And actually, I wanted to get your reaction to this. I don't know if you saw recently what Chuck Schumer had said on MSNBC about Letitia James being, I guess, charged. Have you seen anything about that yet?
Yeah, indicted.
Yeah. So, but Chuck Schumer went on MSNBC, and if you don't mind, I would actually like to show you here real quick because I think that this is rather important to kind of see where we go in the future. Because as you were saying a little bit earlier about the friends that you used to hang out with and that you actually had to cut out of your life, it almost seems like the polarization, albeit we don't have the leadership of Kamala Harris anymore, but we still have the remnants of that party, of that movement. Still in a lot of places of power, and they're escalating their rhetoric even after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, just a few weeks ago. Now they're literally calling for more violence, and so just go ahead and listen to this, and I'll get your reaction.
Talk about Trump's weaponization of the Justice Department. Oh. On Thursday, federal prosecutors indicted your and my state's Attorney General Letitia James for alleged mortgage fraud. Criminal charges against former National Secretary John Bolton could come as early as next week. You've said this is what tyranny looks like. Can you explain that?
Yes, they have made the Justice Department, which under every other president, Democrat or Republican, pursued the law and went after people who broke the law. They have made it into Trump's personal attack dog. That is what dictatorships do. That's what tyranny is all about. And they did it with Tish James. She had a legitimate case. She pursued it. She actually won. So Trump is now trying to get back at her. But the case is so weak that even Trump's first prosecutor, who he appointed, said there's not a case here. So he fired that one and put a new prosecutor in who would do whatever he wants. But I talked to Tish James a half hour after the indictment came through. She is strong. She is tough. She is resolute. And she is confident, as am I, that these charges will be rejected because they have no basis in law or in fact. So I respect her. She's my friend. And it's, they're doing something vicious to her.
Now, sticking with Letitia James' indictment for a moment, the New York Times is reporting the property Trump's Justice Department is claiming is an investment property was being occupied by relatives who were not paying rent. Do you think that could be part of the reason why career prosecutors were reluctant to move forward with this case in the first place?
I haven't seen the specific factual affidavits and things like that, but yes, it was absolutely clear that they had no case. And one of them was fired because he wouldn't do it. To his integrity, he said, there's no case here. I'm not going forward. Then they find another one. It is just such a hallmark of tyrannical, autocratic dictatorship societies that they use the prosecutorial department as a political weapon. It is a disgrace, and every American, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, moderate, people should be forcefully rising up against this, speaking out against it, and making it clear how inimical this is to what our democracy has been stood for more than two centuries.
I think that's the most important part there, where he claims that Americans need to forcefully rise against this after calling Trump a dictator and an authoritarian and saying that he's completely ruined our democracy. He comes out specifically saying that they need to forcefully rise up against. Now, after we've seen the political violence over these past couple of years escalating to the point where someone like Charlie Kirk gets assassinated for discussing this stuff, I mean, how long are we supposed to tolerate this kind of this call to violence? I mean, this is a literal call to violence here, saying that they need to forcefully rise up against. I mean, you're not supposed to attribute anything to malice that can be attributed to incompetence. I don't think that we're moving past the stage of incompetence now, where the rhetoric hasn't changed. It's only escalated since we've seen more and more political violence.
No, that's right. Look, there's two main tools of communists: propaganda and violence. And the violence is used to intimidate you into silence. And that's why they can usually win with a slender minority. And that's what they're trying to do in this country too. And the fact that the thing that's so ironic is everything they accuse Trump of doing, they're guilty of. So Letitia James tried to say that Donald Trump was basically committing bank fraud by giving information to the bank that was inaccurate. And, they went down through all the stuff about Mar-a-Lago's only worth $18 million and all this foolishness. And, at the end of the day, if you're going to be the prosecutor going after Trump on having that he should have perfect bank records, and you don't have perfect bank records, seems perfectly legitimate for that standard that you were trying to hold Trump to be held to you. Remember, the whole thing started with Trump's CFO. Their claim was that he was misrepresenting a company car in his taxes. A company car in his taxes. That became a big federal investigation practically, and the desire to bring Trump down. If you look at all of these charges coming against these folks, they're the people that came after Trump on the very thing that they're guilty of.
Yeah.
And, John Bolton, someone who used to be a CPAC board member, we used to be very close friends. It's been very sad for me to watch him try to help communists and socialists get into office. And his number one thing was he wanted to be strong from a national security perspective. And he's letting these weak people in to run the Pentagon. I mean, just because he hates Trump. And my understanding is if he gets indicted, it's for the misuse of classified information. But yet it was John Bolton and many others who went on TV and said that Trump should be brought on charges. And the Mar-a-Lago raid was totally reasonable because he had, not following the law on handling documents and records and classified information, and that he had, shared classified information in a way that was inappropriate. And that's what he was being prosecuted over. And, lo and behold, it seems like some of the very people that were saying Trump mishandled classified information were the ones who were mishandling classified information.
Exactly right.
Their Biden laptop, which they all told us was a Russian op, turns out it was right. It was actually Hunter Biden was doing a lot of the things that they were accusing Donald Trump and his family of doing, and it just goes on and on and on. And the typical Republican response to all this is, why don't we forgive them in hopes that they will never go after us again? And that is the wrong approach. The fact is, although it'll be very hard for people like Letitia James to ever be convicted in the woke courtrooms in Atlanta, in New York, in Washington, D.C., people like you and I probably can never win in these jurisdictions, no matter what the charge is. No. So it'll be very hard for us to win in court, but we damn well should put them through this process. We damn well should talk to the American people about all the hypocrisy of what they were doing while they were going after Trump. It's the only way to somehow get back to neutral, where neither political party will use its power. Think about this. Obama and Biden spied on the media. They spied on their political opponents. They used the IRS to try to go after their political opponents. And people forget Obama did these things.
Yeah. Peter Strzok, the insurance policy.
And the Republican answer is for us to say, okay, let's pardon you, and then we'll hope that you'll never go after us. So I'm telling you something. If these crazy people get back into power, people like us are going to be prosecuted. After Joe Biden won the White House, there was a federal investigation opened up on CPAC in a nanosecond. And one of our top staffers was put through hell. We spent millions of dollars on a lawsuit that involved $30,000. in a primary. Even if there was a misuse of that money, which I don't believe there was, it wasn't enough to warrant spending millions of dollars in making someone feel like they were going to go to prison for a good long time over it. And that's what they do with their power. They identify who their opponents are, and they find every which way to create high stress, high legal bills, and the fear that you will lose your life. And what happens in those situations is people get divorced, people commit suicide. Look at all the J6 victims. It wreaks havoc in their lives, and then all their neighbors know that that happened to them. And the lesson that gets learned is don't fight too hard against the communists, because they'll come back at you and they'll put you in prison and they'll ruin your lives. And they've done it to thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans and many of my friends, and we better fight back.
Well, let me ask you a question in that regard of communism. We have members of the Democrat Party, many members, AOC, Cory Booker, Rashida Tlaib, Hakeem Jeffries, and many others who all belong to the DSA. And we know the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, were pro-Hamas. The New York Post did an entire expose where they went into the rallies. And yet these people they belong to a communist group that espouse this type of hatred, and yet they hold political office. It befuddles me. I don't understand how that's
Remember,
allowed.
Antifa isn't a thing. As one political leader said, this is a made-up organization, and that's a lie. And the fact that somehow the Democrat Socialists of America are these wonderful, patriotic, peace-loving people is also a lie. And look, I think under the Trump era, we have a chance to expose all of this, and I think that's the best part. Guys, would you be terribly offended if I told you that my family unit is desperately calling for me to jump back into it?
We appreciate you.
Some kids on some homework.
Hey, I got one last really quick question for you. Because I know that we originally started talking about this peace deal and kind of what this moment represents, and if you could, what would you wish, or what would you want the people to take away from a moment like this? If you could take any lesson from this, or teaching from this moment, and kind of maybe give hope for the future, would you have any kind of a message?
We had the hostages and the released hostages, their family members of those who were still hostages. We've had them at every one of our CPAC events since that terrible day on October 7th. And I would say it's a great lesson to believe in hope. Tony Abbott, who was a great conservative prime minister of Australia, I asked him at one of our CPAC events if he was optimistic about the future. And he's a Christian. And he said, no, I'm not optimistic, but I have hope. And what the hostages and their families showed us is that it's a virtue to not give in to despair. It's a virtue to believe that there's a chance that a miracle could be around the corner. So yes, there's the geopolitical questions about the peace deal, but then there's this basic human question. Your loved one's in a tunnel being probably tortured and slowly starved to death.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that reality? And do you give up hope, or do you believe there's a chance? And it was interesting when I talked to the boyfriends, the girlfriends, the family members, they still had hope. You could tell. They believed that they were going to see their loved one, and I didn't believe they ever would. I never told them that. I've never said that publicly, but I didn't believe they'd ever see their loved one again. And then when I saw those videos over the course of the last 24 hours, I felt ashamed that I had given up on hope for these people, and they never gave up on hope. So the lesson out of what's happened with the hostages and the peace deal and everything in the Middle East is we've got to believe that there's a miracle maker. We've got to have hope, and don't give up, and don't let the evil that's around this world get us so down that we stop fighting back and stop smiling and stop competing and stop taking them on. And if they can get us all to extinguish our hope, they're going to win. And so let's not do it.
And that's the Patriots' prayer right there.
All right, God bless.
Really, what it is. Thank you so much for taking the time.
That was fun.
I've been really awaiting this moment for a while to have you on. We've gotten close a few times, but I'm glad that you made it today, and we look forward to the next CPAC. I know our ticket is in the mail. Can't wait to come. That was the greatest event. I think you, and Steve all said that. I don't think we've ever been to anything like that, and we've been to a lot of things, and I just can't wait for the next one.
All right, well, let's go save our country, guys.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Matt.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless you.
Take it easy, guys. Sorry, I got to roll.
You're good, brother.
Good. Have a good time with your family.
Oh, I will.
So, wow. So much more than I expected in a conversation with him. Very much a lot deeper than I expected him to go. A lot of surprising roads he went down, and wow. Really exciting to hear people know. I think me and you have both been through those struggles, Maurice, where telling the truth was going to get you unfollowed and unfriended, and family members weren't going to talk to you. And we've all been through that. And to hear him, say that he went through it on such a much larger scale with the presidents and vice presidents and people you considered to be really notable conservatives who would back a progressive opponent at the last minute. To me, obviously, it's indicative of a much deeper, broader conspiracy that the United States is dealing with. That I think that is the thing that is most, unsaid. But I don't think you can back Kamala Harris as a conservative if there's not a much deeper, broader conspiracy afoot. I mean, what do you think?
I think that I'm glad to see the higher ups in these positions more open to having conversations, because and I'm like, we went down a couple different roads, and you can still tell that it's not like it's not an everyday conversation I would have on the street with some random person, but he still is able to talk a little bit more in depth about these topics than I think what you would have seen 5-10 years ago. Like, yeah. I feel like a lot of these things would have never been said in the way our country's going, and what kind of morality you would like to see moving forward. Like he was openly talking about his Catholic faith and how, he's the chairman of CPAC, and it's one of the largest conventions every year. And I guess it's just nice to see them being more open to having conversations. I think what a
regular guy, a regular guy, and he was willing to talk about things that I didn't know if I went too far with the question at first, and then when he answered it the way he did, I was extremely surprised that he was willing to be that open.
Yeah, I like to see that. And I think it needs to become taboo topics need to become a little bit less and less. I guess whatever taboo topics there are, it's going to need to be discussed more and more. And so at least it feels like we're stepping in the right direction into achieving something like that, to where we can sit down with the CEO or the chairman of CPAC and actually have a more in-depth discussion, as opposed to strictly sticking to various talking points and things like that. Because he sat down and was very open with us about what he wanted to talk about, and so and he didn't give us any guidelines like, well, we're not going to talk about this, we're not going to talk about that
at all,
or anything like that. So
I gave him no questions up front.
Yeah,
no questions up front. It was he came on in good faith, and I'm extremely surprised. He remembered your headdress. Was it great? I don't think any of us got to bed before 2 or 3 in the morning the entire time we were in Maryland, DC area, and leaving CPAC, midnight. And it just amazing time. We were hanging out with Mr. Reagan, Mindy Robinson, Glenn Baker, Sheldon Daniel was there. I mean, there was just an abundance of personalities and people, and not all of them got along, I'll be honest, but they were all there and they all had different perspectives, which some of that clashing was over, but we saw some amazing things. We saw J6ers just out of nowhere spontaneously just start singing the national anthem at like midnight in the middle of the Gaylord Hotel.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden just belting out.
I forgot about that.
It was just something to see. It was, just this whole last couple of years, there's been so many historic moments that we've gotten to be a part of. The People's Convention in Detroit, sitting in a box seat at the inauguration, talking to Jason Aldean and running into all those people. I wish you would have came with me. I tried to talk you into coming. You would have had an amazing time. It was just, from everything that we've done, Hetero Awesome Fest and all of just guys.
More to come, man.
There's just, so many memories they're just going to carry with us to know that we've been a part of so many things that we're just lucky. All grace to God for opening the doors that he's opened, because it's not due to anything that I've done. I haven't earned the opportunities that I've been given, but I tell you what, I'm praying a lot more lately.
And I think that's the right way to go. You guys, thank you for sharing the stream and joining in. I know that we didn't get to a lot of the chat here tonight, but I do appreciate you guys tuning in. I always like to peek over and see what you guys are chatting about. So tomorrow, Steve and I will be back, or maybe Steve will be back. I'm not sure. But we'll see what's going on tomorrow. 6 p.m. I for sure will be streaming tomorrow. God bless you guys. Thank you again for tuning in. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. Have a great night.
My people of this country, and we're under attack. They ban us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough.
This is the Patriot's Prayer Podcast. It's a tremendous show, one of the greatest shows in the history of the world.
This is Bryson Gray, and you are watching the Patriot's Prayer.
PPN, you're doing the right thing.
On the Patriot Prayer Network. Thank you all.
PPN on your bumper.
I'm Tom McDonald. This is the Patriot Prayers Network. Check it out. Lots of good TV. Lots of cool people. Tune in. Keep it locked.
Know where I stand. I'm the white boy with the middle fingers in the air, dog. We don't give a what. 100 white boys gonna hold me down anywhere, dog. We think that you suck. My Patriots the craziest. They ain't afraid of breaking fists on faces. If you really wanna taste of this, no safety tip. The same mistake and spray the clip. I pray you miss, cause if you don't, they gon' go wacko. Automatic gun smoke like tobacco. Never hit a lady, but it's pretty hard to tell if you're a girl or a they, them. There's these, that, those. I ain't never gonna take a knee for the anthem. Smack them. I don't give a damn, can't stand them. Gang full of randoms. Fan with a handgun. Run up in your mansion, leave it all abandoned. I was raised to be brave to the grave. United States, we love the country that they've been corrupting. Go woke and go broker if you ain't obeyed. My people of this country, and we're under attack. They ban us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flag.